There's a kind of patience that looks like weakness from the outside. I know this because I practiced it for 22 years. I kept the peace. I smoothed things over. I told myself that a man who doesn't react is a man in control, and I wasn't wrong about that part. What I got wrong was the part where I confused controlling myself with accepting things I never should have accepted. Those are two very different things. It took one phone call on a Saturday morning in October to make me understand the difference. And once I understood it, I could not go back to not understanding it. That's the thing about clarity. It doesn't negotiate. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get settled, because this one goes somewhere. Drop a comment, and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to love it here. My name is Gary Malone. I am 61 years old. I spent 34 years as a civil infrastructure engineer with the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, and then another 6 years running my own consulting firm before I retired at 59. I understand load tolerances. I understand what happens when a structure carries more weight than it was designed to hold. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually over time until one day something gives and the whole thing shifts in a way that cannot be undone. Turns out that knowledge applies to more than bridges. I coach youth soccer on Sunday mornings. I drive a 2017 Ford F-250 that I've owned since it had 11 miles on the odometer. I take my coffee black. I learned a long time ago not to complicate things that don't need complicating. My wife's name is Diane Malone. Married 22 years as of last March. She is organized in the way some people are organized, not to help anyone, but to have something to manage. She color codes the pantry. She keeps a paper agenda. She maintains, with genuine intention, a social calendar that would exhaust a woman half her age. Luncheons, charity boards, garden club, and baby showers. 3. Sometimes for a year, for women I met once or never, staged in our living room with cloth napkins folded into specific shapes and a brand of sparkling water she ordered from a company in Vermont. I want to be honest about something. I did not dislike that woman for 22 years. I loved her, the quiet kind, the kind that learns how someone takes their coffee and never forgets, the kind that doesn't announce itself. I showed up. That's what I did. I showed up to things. I remembered things. I built things. And somewhere in that, I made a mistake of assuming that a person who accepts your consistency eventually learns to match it. Some people don't. Some people just get comfortable. My son's name is Daniel Malone. He is 33 years old. He works in commercial construction management. Came to it honestly, watching his father talk through structural calculations at the kitchen table from the time he was about 8 years old. He lives in Concord, 20 minutes north on I-85. For 3 years after he moved back from Atlanta, he drove that stretch every Sunday for dinner. Nobody asked him to. He just did it. That's the kind of man he is. Diane and Daniel were never close. She was civil, politely, appropriately civil. In a way someone is civil with a person they've quietly decided doesn't require more than surface effort. I noticed it for years. I told myself it didn't matter because Daniel was an adult, and adults don't need their stepmother to love them. I was right and wrong about that at the same time, and I knew it, and I let it go anyway. That's on me. It was Saturday, October 4th. I was in the kitchen at 8:09 in the morning, making my second cup of coffee. The old machine, the loud one. The one Diane has asked me to replace 4 times on the grounds that it sounds like a truck downshifting. I have declined 4 times on the grounds that it works, and I don't see the problem. The house was already in full motion. The baby shower started at 11. She'd been moving since 6:30. Trays of food on the counter. Fresh flowers on the dining table. The Vermont sparkling water lined up beside the refrigerator in 2 neat rows, like they were waiting for a photograph. My phone rang at 8:14. Daniel. I picked up on the first ring. Dad. His voice was wrong. Not the wrong that means a hard week at work. The wrong that gets into your blood before your mind catches up. Danny, what happened? I was on I-85 southbound. I hydroplaned near the Concord Mills exit. Dad. A truck? There was a truck. His voice cut. They've got me in the ambulance right now. I think my shoulder is broken. Maybe some ribs. They're taking me to Carolina's Medical. I was already moving toward my jacket on the hook by the door. Are you conscious? Can you feel your legs? Talk to me. I'm okay, Dad. He was breathing slowly, deliberately, the way you breathe when something in your body is screaming and you're trying not to let it out. I just didn't want you to hear it from someone else. 33 years old, in an ambulance, calling his father to make sure he heard it from the right person. I have spent 33 years trying to deserve that kind of consideration. I'm coming, I said. Don't sign anything. Don't move anything you don't have to move. I'll be there before they know what to do with you. I hung up. Diane was standing in the kitchen doorway. She was holding a tray of petit fours, pink and white, arranged in a careful spiral. And she had heard enough. Daniel was in an accident, I said. I-85. He's in the ambulance right now. They're taking him to Carolina's Medical. Broken shoulder, possible ribs. I have to go. She looked at me. She looked at the tray. She looked back at me. A beat passed. Oh, Gary. The voice was sympathetic the way a weather report is sympathetic about rain. Is he going to be all right? That's why I'm going, I said, to find out. She set the tray on the counter carefully, smoothed the front of her apron. The girls are arriving in 2 hours and 40 minutes, she said. You understand I can't cancel at this point. Melissa is 8 months along. I picked up my keys from the hook. I know, I said. She picked the tray back up, adjusted it slightly on her palm. Send him my love. I want to stay with those 4 words for a moment, because everything that follows comes out of those 4 words. Not the accident, not the shoulder, not anything that happened in the days after. Those 4 words. Send him my love. Not is he okay. Not which hospital. Not do you need me to call anyone. Not even the basic, reflexive, human response of setting the tray down for 10 seconds and standing next to her husband while he processed that his son was hurt. Just that. 4 words. The minimum required surface area of caring, delivered while holding a tray of petit fours, with 11 o'clock arrivals already factored in. Something inside me settled into a quiet I had never quite felt before. Not anger. Anger is hot, and I am not a hot man. This was the opposite of heat. Cold and still and absolutely clear. The specific clarity of a man who has just been shown something he will not be able to unsee. I did not say anything back to her. I put on my jacket, picked up my phone, and I walked through the living room. Cloth napkins on the table, the flowers, the sparkling water cooling in rows, and out the front door into the October morning. The air was sharp, honest. The driveway was wet from the overnight rain. I got into my truck, started the engine, sat there for 15 seconds. Then I made a call. If you have been listening for a while, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and it means everything to us. Hit the like button while you're at it and drop your thoughts in the comments. Raymond Okafor. I have known Raymond Okafor for 27 years. We met on a city infrastructure project in 1999. He was doing structural review. I was the project lead, and he caught an error in my load calculation for a pedestrian overpass on Brookshire Freeway that would have cost the city north of $2 million to fix after pour. He didn't escalate it. He didn't use it. He walked to my desk, put the drawing in front of me, and said quietly, I think you want to look at line 14 again. That's it. That's all. Just line 14. We've been friends since that afternoon, and I have never once had to explain my thinking to him from the beginning. Raymond is not an attorney. He is a retired chief structural engineer for the largest infrastructure firm in the Carolinas. He knows documents the way I know documents, not for what they say on the surface, but for what would collapse if they were wrong. He has been the second set of eyes on every significant financial decision I've made since 2003. He picked up on the second ring. Malone, what's going on? Daniel's in an ambulance. I said, I-85, Carolina's Medical. Can you meet me there? A pause, not hesitation. The pause of a man calculating route and time. Give me 25 minutes, he said. I'll be there. He did not ask if it was serious. He did not say, I'm so sorry. He said, give me 25 minutes. That is Raymond Okafor. That is what 27 years of the right kind of friendship looks like. I pulled out of the driveway at 8:22 and drove north on I-85. The road was damp. I drove the speed limit, both hands on the wheel, the way my father taught me, and I thought about almost nothing, which is what I do when I'm thinking about everything. Carolina's Medical Center on Blythe Boulevard was busy for a Saturday. I checked in at the emergency desk at 8:49. The woman at the front, Patricia, gray braid, the unhurried competence of someone 20 years into this job, told me Daniel had arrived 7 minutes before me and that someone would be out soon. I sat in the waiting area, near the window, plastic chair. I could see my truck in the lot. The television in the corner was playing something with the volume too loud, and I could not tell you what it was. I got coffee from a machine by the elevator, the kind of coffee that reminds you to be grateful for the coffee you have at home, and I didn't taste a single sip. Raymond came through the automatic doors at 9:11. He found me in the time it takes a man to exhale, walked straight across the room, and sat down in the chair beside mine. He set his jacket on his knee. How bad? Don't know yet. Shoulder for certain. Maybe ribs. He nodded, looked at the window. Diane come? No. He nodded again, slower. Didn't say anything else and didn't need to. We sat there for an hour and 40 minutes. He told me about his daughter's new place in Raleigh. I told him about the youth soccer team and the playoffs coming up in November. Neither of us said the thing we were both sitting next to. That's the kind of friendship where the thing doesn't need to be said to exist in the room with you. The doctor came out at 10:46. His name was Dr. Marcus Webb Compact Build. Direct eyes, the quiet efficiency of someone who has delivered enough hard news that he's learned to be exact about it. Clavicle fracture, right side. 2 cracked ribs, no internal bleeding. Significant bruising along the shoulder and collarbone. Surgery on the clavicle Tuesday morning. Tonight. Pain management monitoring, keep him still. Can I see him? 20 minutes. I exhaled, sat back down. Raymond handed me the second bad coffee. She said, send him my love. I said, I hadn't planned to say it out loud. It just came out. Raymond looked at the window. A long moment. 22 years, he said. Not a question. Not pity. Just the weight of the number placed where it belonged. Yeah, I said. He turned and looked at me directly. That's enough for you to look at something, Gary. I know it, I said. I went in to see Daniel at 11:09. He was pale in the way people go pale after the adrenaline exits. The body remembering what happened to it after the emergency has moved on. Right arm immobilized. Bruise along his jaw I wasn't expecting. He looked up when I came in, and something shifted in his face. The specific thing that shifts in a grown man's face when the person he needed to show up actually shows up. Dad. Quieter than usual. I'm here, I said. I pulled the chair to the side of the bed and sat down. I'm here, Danny. He looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then, carefully, Diane come? Baby shower, I said. Even. He nodded once. The nod I mentioned earlier. The one he has been making for 15 years. The one that says I know. I've always known. I'm not going to make you talk about it. That nod landed in my chest like something dropped from a significant height. We sat for nearly 3 hours. I got him better coffee from the cafeteria 2 floors up. We watched the game on the small television with the volume low. We talked about his project in Concord, about the adjuster calling Monday about his truck, about whether the surgery was going to affect his timeline at work. He fell asleep at 1:33 with the game still running. I sat there another 22 minutes watching him, thinking about structures, about what holds and what doesn't, about load points and stress fractures, and the way a thing can look solid from the outside for years and years, and then one day show you exactly what a failure was always going to be. I left at 1:55, stopped in the hallway outside his room. Fluorescent light, linoleum, the institutional quiet of a hospital on a weekend afternoon. I looked at my phone. No messages from Diane. Not a single one. Not in 3 hours and 40 minutes. I stood in that hallway for a moment. Then I walked to the lobby. Raymond was waiting. He stood up when he saw my face. Surgery Tuesday morning. I told him, clavicle. He's going to be fine. Good, he said. He held my eyes. You doing all right? I thought about that for a moment. The honest answer was that I was better than all right. Something had become very clear to me over the last 3 hours in a way that I suspected was permanent. Raymond, I said, the consulting firm. The LLC I kept when I retired. The Waverly Road property. He was quiet. He knew exactly what I meant and exactly why I was naming those three things in a hospital lobby on a Saturday afternoon. You want to know where you actually stand, he said. I need to know where I actually stand. He thought for a moment, not fast, not slow, but complete, the way he thinks. Call Frank Osei Monday morning, he said. First thing, before 9. Frank Osei, attorney at law, Charlotte. 31 years of practice, 20 of them in asset and estate law. I had used Frank once before, 12 years ago, for the LLC filing when I incorporated a consulting firm. Sharp man, the kind of attorney who listens more than he talks. I'll call him, I said. Raymond held out his hand. I shook it. I drove south on I-85 at 2:14 p.m. flat white October sun on the wet road. Radio off. Both hands on the wheel. I replayed the morning the way an engineer reviews a sequence, not emotionally, not reactively, but systematically, looking at each element and asking the same question I always ask when I'm assessing a structure. Does this hold, and has it ever actually held, or have I just been telling myself it did? I pulled into my driveway at 2:47, sat in the truck for 11 minutes. The baby shower was apparently over. Diane's car was the only one there. The house looked quiet and orderly from the outside. It always looked quiet and orderly from the outside. I went inside, made a pot of coffee I didn't need, because I think better with something in my hands. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had done 30 years of work, where I had reviewed drawings and run calculations and made every significant decision in my professional life. And I stayed there until 4:30 in the afternoon, thinking. Diane came downstairs at 3:15. She came into the kitchen in her good clothes, shoes still on, which meant she had not been upstairs long. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. How is he? She asked. Clavicle fracture, I said. 2 cracked ribs. Surgery on Tuesday. Oh, a pause. Well, that's manageable. That's manageable. I let that land where it landed. How was the shower? I asked. She smiled then, genuine, relaxed, the smile of a woman who'd had a good afternoon. Lovely. Melissa looked wonderful. We did a little guessing game of the name, and she stopped, looked at me. Gary, are you angry with me? No, I said. I wasn't. That was the truth. She waited for more. I didn't give her more. I drank my coffee and looked at the table, and she waited for another 30 seconds. And when I didn't speak, she made a sound that I had heard many times before, a sound that meant this was being unreasonable, and she took her water and went back upstairs. I made 3 phone calls between 4:30 and 6 o'clock that evening. The first was to Frank Osei's office to leave a message for Monday morning. The second was to the county recorder's office, which of course was closed on a Saturday, but I left a voicemail with a specific document number I'd had memorized for 11 years. The third was to my accountant, Bertram Cosey, 14 years my accountant, a methodical, unhurried man who kept every document I'd ever filed organized in a system I could ascribe to you in a way that would make you either very calm or very anxious, depending on what side you were on. Bertram did not answer on Saturday. He called back Sunday morning at 9:02 while I was making coffee. Gary, he said, I got your message. This about what I think it's about? Probably, I said. You want me to pull everything? Pull everything back to 2009, I said. The LLC, Waverly Road, the consulting firm accounts. All of it. A brief pause. Gary, you sure about the direction here? I'm sure, I said. I've been sure since yesterday morning. He exhaled slowly. All right, I'll have a summary ready by Tuesday. The weekend passed the way weekends pass when you've already made a decision, and you're simply moving to the hours before you can act on it. Orderly. Quiet. I checked on Daniel both days. He was in good spirits by Sunday, irritated about his arm, already asking about timelines for physical therapy, which told me he was going to be fine. I told him his truck was probably a total loss, and he said he'd figure as much, and we talked about what he might replace it with, and neither of us mentioned Saturday morning in my kitchen, because we didn't need to. Monday, October 6th, I was in Frank Osei's office on East Moorhead Street at 8:47 in the morning. He was already behind his desk when I arrived, reading glasses on, a yellow legal pad open in front of him, a pen he had not yet picked up. He shook my hand, gestured the chair across from him, and waited. "Frank," I said, "I want to understand exactly what is mine. Not what we have together. What is mine?" He picked up his pen. He looked at me over his reading glasses. "The LLC," I said, "Garland Infrastructure Partners. That was incorporated before the marriage. Diane was never listed as a partner, never drew from it, and signed one tax disclosure in 2018 that she has, to my knowledge, never looked at again." He wrote something. "What about Waverly Road? Purchased in 2006 in my name alone. I used the consulting firm account as the source. Diane's name does not appear on the deed, the insurance, or the property tax filings." He wrote something else. "The consulting firm accounts, Bertram Cosi, has a full summary coming Tuesday. But I can tell you from memory that the operating account carried roughly $214,000 at the time I wound the firm down, and I transferred that into a savings account under the LLC, which has not been touched since." I wrote the account number on a piece of paper and placed it on his desk. Frank looked at it, picked it up, set it next to the legal pad. He asked me several more questions. Precise questions. The kind of attorney who listens more than he talks. We were in that office for 51 minutes, and when we stood to leave, he shook my hand again and said, "Gary, based on what you've told me, I believe your position is substantially stronger than you may have assumed going into this. I'm going to verify everything Bertram sends, and we'll talk Wednesday." I drove back home on East Moorhead and parked in the driveway. I sat in the truck for a moment. The October morning was clear and cold. A good day for clarity. I went inside and made coffee. The good coffee, because the morning deserved it. Tuesday was Daniel's surgery. I was at Carolina's Medical at 6:15 a.m., 2 hours before they took him in. We sat in the pre-op area, and I read the newspaper I'd picked up at the gas station, an actual print newspaper, which I do on occasion because I am 61 years old and some habits are load-bearing, and Daniel slept in the reclining chair beside me with his arm across his chest. The surgery took 2 hours and 14 minutes. Dr. Webb came out at 10:43 and told me it had gone exactly as planned. Plate and screws in the clavicle. Clean procedure, 6 to 8 weeks in a sling. Physical therapy after. Daniel was awake by noon. "Groggy but awake." He looked at me and said, "You been here since 6? 6:15, I said. He made a sound that might have been a laugh if his ribs hadn't stopped it. Diane didn't come to the surgery either. I want you to know that I did not tell her what time it was scheduled. She didn't ask. Frank Osei called Wednesday morning at 8:54. "Gary, I have Bertram's summary in front of me, and I've had time to review the LLC filings and the Waverly Road deed history." He paused the pause of a man who has organized his words. "Your consulting firm, Garland Infrastructure Partners, was incorporated in March of 2001, 7 months before your marriage. Diane's name does not appear in any organizational documents, amendment filings, or partnership records. The Waverly Road property was purchased in your name alone in September 2006. The deed has never been amended. The account your firm's proceeds were transferred into is held under the LLC and has never included her as a joint holder." He paused again. "Frank," I said, "bottom line it for me. Bottom line is this. If you proceed with a separation, those assets are almost certainly classified as separate property under North Carolina law. She would have a very limited claim, if any, on the LLC, the Waverly Road property, or the accounts associated with them. What you build is yours." I sat with that for a moment. The LLC alone was valued at roughly $340,000. Waverly Road. I'd had it appraised the previous spring for an unrelated reason. Came in at $487,000. The account under the LLC carried $218,400. None of that was a surprise to me. I had built those things one careful decision at a time over 34 years. I had simply never felt any reason to draw a line around them before. "Thank you, Frank," I said. "Do you want to proceed?" "Not yet," I said. "When I'm ready, I'll call you." I hung up, poured the coffee that had gone cold while we talked. Stood at the kitchen window, looking at the backyard. The oak tree at the back of the property had dropped most of its leaves. The grass was wet. The yard looked quiet and a little tired, the way things look in October. I thought about the moment in the kitchen 8 days ago. The tray of petit fours. The 2 neat rows of sparkling water. Sending my love. I thought about Daniel's nod, the one he'd been making for 15 years. I thought about 22 years of showing up for a person who had quietly decided that her showing up was conditional, not malicious, not calculated, just conditional. The way a person is when they've never once had to pay the cost of choosing not to show up, because the other person has always absorbed it. The problem with absorbing things for 22 years is that eventually the person absorbing them disappears. Not dramatically, not all at once, just gradually, in the way structures shift, invisible until something makes you look at where the stress has been going. I had been looking at it for 8 days. I had seen everything I needed to see. I called Frank Osei back at 2:30 that afternoon. He picked up on the second ring. "Frank," I said, "let's proceed." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "All right, Gary. I'll have the paperwork started by end of day." "There's one more thing," I said. He waited. Daniel's surgery was Tuesday. The recovery will take 6 to 8 weeks. He's going to need a place he's comfortable staying during that time. I'd like to add him as a resident of the Waverly Road property, with the right to remain there at no cost for as long as he needs it. A pause. "That's straightforward," he said. "I can document it this week." "Good," I said. "Thank you, Frank." I hung up, stood in the kitchen for a moment. Then I made a fresh pot of coffee, sat down at the table, and stayed there until the light changed outside, and the yard went from gold to gray in the way October afternoons do, quickly and without warning. Diane came home at 5:47. She set her bag on the counter, looked at me, and must have read something in the quality of my stillness, because she stopped. "Gary, what's going on?" I looked at her. "I want you to understand something about that moment, because it matters." I felt nothing dramatic in it. No anger, no satisfaction, no relief, not yet. Just a calm specific to a man who has completed a long calculation and verified the result, and is now simply reading it aloud. "I've spoken with Frank Osei," I said. "I'm going to be filing for separation." She stared at me. "I've been working through this since October 4th, I said. "Since Saturday morning. Since you handed me a tray and told me to send my son your love while he was in an ambulance on the interstate." Her face moved through several things very quickly. Disbelief, then something harder, more controlled. "Gary, you cannot be serious." "One morning." "It wasn't one morning," I said. I kept my voice even, steady, the same voice I use when I'm reviewing a structural report with junior engineer. Not unkind, just precise. It was 15 years of a gnawed Diane. It was Daniel driving 20 minutes every Sunday for 3 years and you being civil. It was one question from an ambulance that you did not ask. She pressed her lips together. "And last Saturday morning," I said, "my son called me from an ambulance and you told me to send him your love and went back to your tray. And something in me understood something that I have been not understanding for a very long time." She started to say something, then stopped. "I'm not angry," I told her. "I want to be clear about that. I am done. Those are different things." The kitchen was absolutely quiet. Outside the window, the yard was fully dark now. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere down the block, a car passed slowly. She looked at me for a long moment. Really looked. The way people look when they've suddenly realized the ground they were standing on has changed without them being told. Not with grief, not yet. With the specific disorientation of a person who has just discovered that the thing they believed was solid was never as solid as they assumed. I stood up, rinsed my mug, set it in the drying rack the way I do every evening. "Frank's office will be in touch," I said. "I'll be staying in the house while the paperwork is processed." I walked to the door of the kitchen. Stopped. "Daniel's doing well. By the way," I said, "surgery went clean. He'll be moving to Waverly Road to recover." I didn't look back. I went upstairs, sat in the chair in the corner of the bedroom near the window, and looked out at the street for a while. The October night was clear and cold. A good night to be clear about things.